Hey guys, AJ here from Stevens Motorsports. Kind of wanted to do a walkthrough today of something that I've been getting some questions about lately. More specifically with like why or how my screen is set up during races. I guess what I like about it, and kind of walk through, I guess, how to use Racelabs as a whole. So we're just gonna go ahead and start off into it. I've already kind of got this up on screen so you can see how I have most of my layout, and just kind of talk through Racelabs and how to set it up. I feel like there's a lot of videos out there. It just kind of depends on what you're comfortable with, what you like. There's some things that I could put up here that I don't, that I sometimes use in my videos, that I don't necessarily use during race time, and we'll kind of talk through that too. But this is the general overview. This is the Racelabs dashboard, which you can adjust at any time throughout the race. Say you got into practice, I want to add something, you can add that really easy, and I'll show you how to do that as we go through this. Most of the top tier dashboard I don't use a whole lot, because you can check it through iRacing. You can use this with F1, Assetto Corsa, and rFactory 2. I don't use it for that because I only have iRacing, but same kind of properties apply. So let's jump into overlays, and I'll kind of walk you through it. Anything with a diamond next to it that is specifically to the Pro version. I actually pay for the Pro version because there's some things in here, and we'll touch on that I actually really like. And it's fairly cheap. I think it's like $10 a month or something like that, which I have started seeing new features come. So, by all means, if you can afford it, I would suggest, supporting the developer if you can, just so we get some new features, stuff like that. Just to kind of cover some basic things so I don't have to rehash it as we get through the rest of these overlays. One thing that you will see on all of them is you have this little box here in the corner. So if you have a specific overlay that you really like, that you want it to open all the time, you can click it to auto open. You can also use this box to close a window if you're, in a race and you're, I thought this was going to work. I didn't really like it. You can go ahead and click close open window, and it'll just close it out. So like, for instance, if you look in the bottom right, I've got my relatives. If I click close window, it goes away. If I click open it, it brings it back. You do have to be in a session for this to do what you want it to, or, if you kind of want to see it in practice before you just rush into a race and go, oh no, this is in like the wrong spot. The other thing to note is you have this locked button right here. So like most of my stuff is locked. There are a few things that I tend to move around. But if you like relatives, if you find a spot that works for you and you really, really like it, you can just lock it. And then that way, when it opens up the next time, for your next race or your practice session or whatever, it's already there. It's in its spot. You don't have to mess with it. Now, if it's something that you like to move around, like my blind spots or my advanced panel here, depending on the car, I may move it up or down. You can choose to click unlock, and then you just, if it'll let me here, you just click on it. You can move this around, set it wherever. And if that works for you, or you want to leave it there, you want to leave it unlocked, you can leave it unlocked and keep it to auto open, and it'll open in that same spot every time. I just like to lock it. Then that way I don't click on something that I'm not supposed to and move on. So getting into more of the, what do we see here with each of these on my screen? With the relatives, I have state of field on mine. I also have incidents. So it's how many incidents to usually penalty or disqualification, depending on the race that you're running. And then I usually have 3 above, 3 below is how mine is set up. So you've got the 3 in front of you or 3 behind. You're always the middle one. That's just how it's laid out. And then you're going to have position. If it's multi-class, you'll have the different color breakdowns. Obviously name, license, and kind of where they're at in their license. I-rating and I-rating change depending on, if they were to finish in that position right now, what would be their I-rating change. Seconds ahead or behind. And then you can do either, metric or standard. I use feet because I'm in the U.S. And then it's just distance in front or behind. Then you get down into all of the nitty-gritty adjustment in here. You can adjust everything from the driver name to the background, if it's see-through, if it's not see-through, if the font's bolded or not. It definitely has some adjustability. You can adjust font size even. So depending on, screen size and, if you're a person that has to wear glasses, you may want the font size bigger so you can see it. We get into widgets, and a lot of that is like the stuff on the outside edges. So race time, state of field, incidents, laps. Again, if you want something specific, usually or if you want more than one, you've got to have more than the base, install, which is free. You can adjust one thing on it to whatever you'd like. Everything else will be locked down if it's not pro. If you have the pro, then obviously you can have some major adjustability with it. Driver info, you can change if it's first name, last name, first name. You can turn the class on and off. You can turn the distance on and off. You can change how the real-time separation is set up. It's kind of insane the amount of adjustability. Again, more changes with Pro that are around, driver rating, I-rating, license, all that stuff. I haven't messed with reference driver, so I'm just gonna. I think that's usually like if you're doing practice and you have, obviously the ghost that can come on. You can set different things for lap times. I actually have two different sections, and I'll kind of cover that here in just a minute. Of why I have relatives and standings. Mostly it's just to kind of keep it a little bit cleaner. You can set pit info on the relatives. Again, I have it in a different spot. I do have it set to at least show me out lap down here as well as on standings, which comes in handy. So now we'll just jump over to standings. And again, this is what I have in the upper right corner. This does a lot of the same things as relatives. I don't have nearly the specific info that relatives has. Standing has different. So I'm getting multiple different things, but in a cleaner. I don't have it in this jam-packed little box deal. Standings will show you a lot further if you want it to. And kind of being in the upper left corner over here, you can make it a little bit bigger. You can have obviously more information because it's not necessarily in your line of sight, whereas down here it could get kind of funky. Again, it does multi-class. It does name, car number, which that's something that down here I don't have in my relatives' car number. I have it in the upper left. And I've noticed in the upper left kind of works better, especially at ovals, because then I can just kind of glance because I'm already, turning that way. So it's helpful. Again, class, license class as well as I-rating. Some people like the manufacturer, especially if you're doing, endurance races, LMP2 stuff, LMHD stuff, GTM. I do have, for mine, I have an interval and I have a gap. And it kind of separates it into distance to the leader versus distance to the person in front of you. And then I have fastest and last lap on mine. it's like I said, instead of jamming it down in the relatives, at least the relatives is like what's happening with my race right around me, whereas my standings is what's going on in the race as a whole. And like I said, it just kind of gives you that split, so you're not trying to jam too much info into one little screen is my thing. Again, like I said, all of these options are the same as before, and that's going to be the same through all the rest of the overlays. Widgets, the only widget you get for this one is the timer at the top, which I generally don't use because I already have it in the relatives, so it's just kind of a redundant thing. More multi-class adjustment, which I don't use too often. And then this is kind of the same as the way that the relatives were. You have pretty much all the same adjustment that you do in the relatives. Get that out of here. So, and again, driver rating, reference driver, lap times. Again, that's all the same. This is where I put my pit info, though. If I want to see how long somebody's pit took, if I want to see how long they've been on current stint, if I'm doing like a 12-hour race or something like that. That's where I try to put it. Just because of the fact that, if I do, like I did 12 hours of Bathurst, you're going to have multiple classes, so you kind of want to have a breakdown of who's near you, who's around you, that sort of thing. So H standings is the horizontal standings. I actually use that in quite a bit of my videos where it's just the raw race, not in-car, not live, but I'll put that across the top, and it's kind of handy for videos because then people kind of know what's going on. Some people might actually like this over, say, the standings over here. To me, it seems like it would be a little bit harder to pay attention to just because you've got to wait for that to move across the screen. Again, this is all adjustable. The widgets are kind of in the top part of that bar that you can barely see right there. I like to make sure that I put the temp in there, driver's name, driver position, their car number, and then on the outside edges I do lap and track temp. So it's just kind of I guess you call it like a ESPN or an NBC style broadcast horizontal bar, really. You've got the delta bar, which is kind of similar to relatives, but also kind of like the delta is in iRacing already. I don't use this on mine. I prefer to kind of just stick to the relatives around me and not worry about the delta, because there is such a thing as too much info. I also don't use the lap timing. As you see, it's not anywhere on my screen. The one thing that I do kind of live by, and I've heard some people say that it gets kind of funky, is the fuel calculator. I've never had it short me, but if you're worried, it is a calculator, and we're talking about racing cars, and that stuff can get off. I mean, even the NASCAR guys, the crew chiefs, get off. It happens. So if you're coming down to the critical point of the race, you've got 30 laps left. If you want to throw in a couple extra gallons, it's probably not a bad idea. But this will show you what lap you just did, how much you used, and if there was a difference from the previous lap. That all kind of equates when it comes to your average, your max, and your minimum. The minimum usage is going to show you, okay, if you're sitting there idling all day or, first gear around the track, it's going to show you your usage, how many laps you can make it, and kind of when you should refuel and how many gallons you're going to have at the end. Max is if you're full bore, flat out, just going like crazy. I don't really use max too much. I tend to kind of go off the average because the average has been fairly consistent. This does change throughout the course of the race. So, if you did 15 laps right off the bat, it's going to show you your average for that 15 laps and how far you're going to be able to go before you've got to refuel again. once you hit a caution lap, it will start to recalculate. And that's where I think you can kind of get off. So if you pay attention to the average as you're going, then that's something to actually use and move forward with. If you're paying attention to the average under caution, I would not necessarily go off of that. You can use it if you're trying to go for a long fuel run. You know, if you've got, say, a 40-lap race and the car is full, and at the start of the race it says, well, you can make 33 laps. But then all of a sudden you get 2 cautions in there. It can kind of, you can do the calculation to where you might wind up with 2 gallons left at the end and you didn't even need to stop to refuel. So that's something to kind of play with. I would suggest using that in practice to kind of get used to that. You can set some fuel strategies. I haven't really played with this much, so you know, I don't really have all the answers on it. You can set up auto refuel and stuff like that, but if you're using an app like, say, Crew Chief, you may just let the Crew Chief handle it and call it a day. I do have my additional fuel set to an extra 1.2 laps, so that's probably why I've never been, you know, caught off guard and ran out of fuel. Which brings us to trying to figure out what else we got here, because I don't use the boost box. I don't use that. All right, that brings us to the advanced panel, which you can see I've got down here. This is one of those ones that I tend to kind of move on and off depending on what car I'm driving or what I have kind of located where. This will give you your gear selection, which is the box on the left, or the little round circle. You have your shift lights across the top, speed, RPM, your position. You also have track temp, strength of field, and race time, or not race time, but like time as it sits, I guess, in game world, which I generally don't tend to use. I haven't really changed anything on this except for the opacity, just so that way I can either see through it or I can't. You know, you can turn the shift indicators on and off. You can change the scale. You can change what side is where, so you could move, you know, your gear selection to your right side and your current position to the other side. And then you can also adjust all of this as well. It just kind of depends on what you want. I tend to like this because you know, the way that I sit, you don't necessarily always see the RPM gauge, or you don't see the steering wheel to read the info off of it. So it's kind of handy. The info bar is also completely adjustable. Again, it's all what you want to put there. Again, as well as you've got to have the pro version for that. I don't use the radar bar. Haven't really seen a use for it yet. I do use the blind spot indicators, which has saved me more than once because my Crew Chief spotter was off and whatnot. Basically, when you pull up or you have a car next to you side by side, depending on what side they're on, they're going to light up. The other thing that they'll do is if you're 3 wide in the middle, it'll light up. Or if you're on one of the ends of 3 wide, it'll light up both, just to let you know, hey, you're 3 wide with somebody. Which is, again, very, very handy. It's saved me more than once. So you can change colors on that if you want them to have a border or not, the space between them. And I've got them spaced out so that way it fits right around my advanced panel. And then, all right, this brings me to my next thing, which is input telemetry. So if you look bottom left, I've got input telemetry down there. You guys actually can't see it on screen because my camera's kind of hiding it. Let me move myself here for a second. So if you look bottom left, that's my my input telemetry. It does come in handy for road courses, specifically because there's times where you want to trail brake, you want to know that you're trail braking, that sort of thing. I don't have mine to record yet. I haven't really used that much. But it's something that's kind of handy. The other thing I can tell you is, like, if your pedals disconnect or something, you can look really quick and go, holy crap, my pedals are disconnected, because stuff like that does happen. Again, fully adjustable. You can do graphing, you can do gears, you can do speed, all sorts of stuff. And then the outside ring here, where the little white indicator is actually your steering wheel center. So you can turn that on or off. You can change, what steering wheel you have. So it, this would mimic your actual steering wheel. I don't know. To me, it's something that I don't use that much. It's just nice to have. And then the last thing that I have is the track map up here in the upper right corner. So as you can see, it'll show your position on the track as well as your position in the race. So like the 12 here is position 12. You can change all that. You can show where the delta sectors are on the track and the border and turn numbers and all of that stuff. You can change the car position to be car number. And you can set it to where your car has a different border or it's highlighted different, which you usually wind up bigger anyways. And then if you have, friends that are set up, you can link all of that stuff. To me, it's more of, especially with road courses, it's, if your spotter comes on and says, oh, there's a problem in turn 8. Okay, where's 8 and where am I? It comes in really handy. Now, the one thing that I do have to make this start when I want it to, which kind of comes in play with a lot of things, because I have my crew chief as well set up this way. I use a program called iRacing Manager, which once it detects that iRacing, not the actual UI, but you're loaded into a race, once it detects that, it'll go ahead and get the program up and running, which is, again, really handy, because then you don't have to come in and, okay, I got to start Racelabs right away. Nope, this just does it for you. So you can just add a program, and then I don't know if it'll let me. Nope, that's not what we want to do. So we'll have to stop them all here really quick. You just add the program in here. It'll ask you what icon you want to use, what you want to call it. And you can start and stop. Make sure it's set to with iRacing. Then that way it just starts up for you automatically. So then if we do start all.
Radio check.
It starts Racelabs just like we're loading into the session. It'll take a second and then it'll load in everything. As you could see that I had on that iRacing Manager, I did have K-apps or caps or however you want to call it. Didn't really care for it too much, so I started using Racelabs. Plus the development on K-apps it's kind of stopped at this point. It is free to get everything, so I mean that might be something you want to look at. Again, I don't have a lot of development in it. But yeah, I mean overall, this seems to be the easiest to modify, move around, that sort of thing. So to me, this is probably your best overlay that you can probably use, to be quite honest. And like I said, the pro version's not that expensive. I think it's like $9 a month if you want to, have more info. Because like I said, to a degree, info is a good thing. Sometimes too much info is a bad thing. The other thing that you can do, say you want to kind of declutter the way that this looks, and I'll jump into the car for a second here. Okay, so we're sitting here in the car at this point, and we don't necessarily need to be going around the track to do this, but You can see I've moved some of my black boxes just to make things a little bit easier to play with here. But let's say you want to be able to have this mostly clear. The one thing that you can do is you can actually, if you're running multiple screens, you can move these over to a different screen if you're comfortable with that. I know a lot of guys go right off the side edge of the right of the screen or the left of the screen, so it's on their opposing screens right near where the game is, so that way they can still see them close to the game setting, but the screen is clear. Again, that's totally up to you how you want to move things around. But something else to look at, like I said, is you can see I've moved my black boxes. If you want to move your black boxes, you press Control K. Or is it Control K? Or Control V? It doesn't want to let me. I'm sorry. Alt K. It'll highlight your boxes that you can move. Like I've got the FPS and all that stuff. So you can change where these are at. I know when I put my relative in the bottom down here, it kind of covered up the black box for the timing, which I use for... I kind of jump between lap timing on the current black box, and then I jump to my tires and info. But I also keep this up so that way I can, change out if I want to put tires on or whatever. So that's something that you may want to move around. You can even move your rear view mirror, your pit message, all that stuff. Just so things don't overlap. It makes it to where it looks good. If you want to save it for the car that you're in, like we're in the truck right now, if I wanted to save it just specifically for this car, I hit the checkbox and that's it. But once you move them and then you go Alt K again, it unhighlights them and they're locked there. So that's how you can adjust the default black boxes. Go ahead and back out of this again. So that is pretty much my Racelabs setup, how I've got it configured in a nutshell. If you guys have any other questions, comments, want to know something more about it, let me know in the comments. I'm more than willing to help. I've only been doing this since about December, and I'm still learning. And if somebody has a different suggestion, I'd love to hear it too. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Maybe I'll see you guys on the racetrack soon. Thanks for stopping by.